This episode of Distraction is sponsored by Landmark College in Putney, Vermont, where targeted strategies and individualized personal development models help students to become their own advocates. Learn more at lcdistraction.org. Landmark College. Learn your way. Succeed uniquely. Hello, this is Dr. Ned Hallowell, and welcome to the podcast called Distraction. Today, we're going to be digging into our box of questions from you all, from our listeners, and answer some of them. And please, if you enjoy this feature, send us your question, as we love to receive them and do our very best to answer them. The first question comes from a listener by the name of Henry, and he writes, I'm quoting from his letter to us, his email to us. I was diagnosed back in the 1960s while still in grade school. I was put on medication. All I really remember is that at some point I stopped taking the pills. As I got older, I began using drugs and alcohol to extremes. I became a convicted felon at the age of 18 for complicity in selling LSD and marijuana. I went to rehab and stayed sober for 10 years, but then I relapsed. And soon I had acquired a second felony conviction. At age 40, I was given probation. I completed the probation successfully, but continued to use alcohol and drugs. My drug use became so intense that I again went to drug treatment, and I managed to stop everything. The heroin, cocaine, and alcohol have become things of the past. About 10 years ago, somehow I met the doctor who felt it appropriate to put me on Adderall. Currently, I take 30 milligrams 3 times a day. I'm now 65 years old. My issue is the fact that I have high blood pressure. I'm being treated for this, and the blood pressure medication keeps me around 120/70. Nevertheless, I need to know what is the current position on stimulants and hypertension. I don't like holding this back from my psychiatrist, but ... Thank you for your advice, Henry. Well, what a remarkable story, Henry. First of all, congratulations on getting sober and staying sober. There's a very high correlation of people who have ADD and developing addictions of all kinds. So the fact that you struggled with it for so long and yet were able to get into a state of sobriety, which you're maintaining day by day, my hat goes off to you. That's not an easy thing to do. In fact, it's an incredibly difficult thing to do. As for your question, stimulant medication can elevate blood pressure. But the fact that yours is under control, and 120/70 is a very fine blood pressure to have, it's considered normal, means that sure, you can take your Adderall, just monitor your blood pressure. And by all means, tell your psychiatrist, don't hold that information back. Blood pressure can be controlled with medication. And as long as the stimulant medication is not making it worse, is not raising it to dangerous levels, then you're fine. But just make sure you tell your doctor about it so that you can be on the same page and take care of yourself appropriately. Never a good idea to hold back information from doctors. That's how we can't help you if we don't know you. So anyway, very courageous story, Henry, and my main reaction is congratulations. But by all means, share the information with your doctor. Keep taking your Adderall and keep monitoring your blood pressure. Okay, question number 2. Dear Doc, I have inattentive ADD, but found that just about everything written is slanted towards hyperactive ADHD. Would you recommend any particular book for someone in my situation? Thank you, Bob. Bob, my books, Delivered from Distraction and Driven to Distraction, have lots of material about people who have ADD and are not hyperactive. This is more common among women, but men absolutely, like you, have it as well. And it's the same story, you're just not hyperactive. So pretty much anything that's written about ADD it pertains to you, except the parts that are about hyperactivity or disruptive behavior. You can certainly read accounts of patients delivered from distraction who have ADHD without the H. In other words, ADHD without hyperactivity, or what some people call ADD, which is the term that was used when I first learned about it way back in 1981. ADHD is now the term for all of it, but there is ADHD primarily inattentive, which means ADHD without the H. And certainly delivered from distraction has lots of case stories in there about that condition. Question number 3. Hello, Dr. Hallowell. I want to start by saying I absolutely love your podcast. Thank you very much. And your book. I am 29 years old and just diagnosed with ADHD, primarily inattentive, this year. The books have been a great resource for me, and thank you very much. My question is actually in regard to my boyfriend. We met as co-workers 5 years ago and started dating a year ago. I bring our history up because it's given me the chance to observe him daily in both a work environment and relationship for an extended period of time. It is very obvious to me he has a form of ADHD. When he asked his doctor at the VA for a referral to a specialist for an assessment, he was denied. When we pressed for an answer as to why, the doctor stated that he couldn't have ADHD because he is successful and completely neglected to acknowledge his previous history of difficulties. She did not even bother to reach out to family for their opinion. His history is such that he barely finished high school, struggled in the Navy due to his inattention, dropped out of college, and has had issues in other jobs. He is successful now because he owns his own business and has a lot of supportive people around him to help him manage his life. The doctor instead prescribed him Provigil to deal with symptoms and left it at that. Although Provigil has made him much more awake and alert and unable to sleep, he still has problems with focus, attention, and memory, if not more so now due to the lack of sleep. My questions are the following. Is there any good evidence that Provigil can be an effective drug to treat ADHD? And number 2, he is also being treated for depression and is currently on Wellbutrin. If we find a doctor who will actually help him, will there be any ill effects from combining Wellbutrin with a stimulant like Adderall? If so, what other ADHD medications would you suggest work best with antidepressants? Well, again, too bad that the doctor said he's too successful to have ADHD. That's a common misconception. Some of the most successful people in the world have ADHD. The man who founded JetBlue Airlines, for example, David Neeleman, has it. The current CEO of the company that's combined AOL, Verizon, and Yahoo, Tim Armstrong, has it. And thousands, hundreds of thousands of other highly, highly successful people have the condition. Now, is there any good evidence that Provigil can be an effective drug to treat ADHD? Absolutely, yes. I have patients who swear by it. The best medication is the medication that works for you. And the only way to determine what medication that might happen to be is trial and error. So if he is not getting the symptomatic relief he needs from Provigil, then try another stimulant. Either one in the amphetamine category, like Adderall, or one in the methylphenidate category, like Ritalin or Focalin. But Provigil is certainly a candidate to be tried. As for mixing a stimulant with Wellbutrin, that's absolutely fine. You can combine Wellbutrin with a stimulant. You can combine any of the SSRIs with a stimulant. Again, it's a matter of trial and error to see which one works best for a given person. Question number 4. I have recently discovered I probably have ADHD at age 41. In my research, I came across Driven to Distraction and have begun looking through it. Another adult ADHDer recommended LENS, low-energy neurofeedback system, treatment he's taken for other purposes, and the book also mentioned it. However, at the time that book, it was described as a possible treatment for some of the symptoms of ADHD. I would like to know what Dr. Hallowell thinks of LENS treatment these days. Thanks again for all that you're doing, Scott C. LENS, again, it's like anything else. For the people it works for, it's great. For others, it's not. Its track record is enough that we offer it in my office in Sudbury, but I don't push it. In other words, it's not a first-line intervention. It's an intervention for people who really want to try the non-medication approaches. And if that's you, then go ahead and give it a try. If it works, great. If it doesn't, move on. And thank you for your compliment, Scott. Question number 5. Hi, Dr. Hallowell. About 6 months ago, I moved to a new city to a new job I really enjoy for the most part. But I've developed a new problem with sleep. I'm having trouble getting to sleep, but also having trouble staying asleep. In my last job, I was working with young children, so I was constantly moving my body and running around and picking babies up and moving from one place to another. This job has a lot more desk time. I have ADHD, but also depression and anxiety. I noticed at first that waking up in the middle of the night was anxiety related, but now it can be that I'm really excited about something and I just can't turn it off. I've not been medicated for any mental health issues since 2005. My experience with medication was not very empowering, and I had so little say in what went on, my feelings about side effects and whether or not it was helpful. I don't remember my ADHD or depression medicine being helpful at all, but I'm wondering if I might need to explore it again. I just really don't want to. Do you have any non-medicinal advice for sleeping through the night? Thank you for any information you can provide. Kate from Dallas. Well, if your primary issue is sleep, then you want to rely on sleep hygiene and go see a sleep doctor who can help you with that. But then you also said you have ADHD, but also depression and anxiety. And that suggests that there's more at work here than simply a sleep problem. If it's just a sleep problem, then sleep hygiene, which means, getting to bed at the right time, not doing anything stimulating like electronic time before you go to bed, not taking stimulants like caffeine before you go to bed. That's the category called sleep hygiene. And listening to soothing music as you fall asleep. There are a number of apps that can provide that. But as far as your ADHD, depression, and anxiety go, sure, it's worth revisiting the question of medication, but also the large category of non-medication interventions, which does include proper sleep, physical exercise, meditation, nutrition, and coaching. So consider all of those as tools in the toolbox in addition to revisiting the issue of medication. You can see we're talking about many tools in the toolbox. And so you want to see a doctor who's familiar with all of them and not just focus in on one. The desired, you should be able to get to the place where your depression and anxiety are basically fixed and you gain focus. In other words, the ADHD is taken care of as well. You may have an ongoing vulnerability to depression and anxiety and the symptoms of ADHD, but if you work with the right doctor, you should be able to manage them very effectively so that you can not only do okay, but do very, very well. Well, that's our show for today. We answered listener questions. We'd love you to join that. Thank you to those listeners who reached out with their questions. And if you have a question related to women and ADHD, now is the time to send it to us. We're working on an episode dedicated just to that topic, and we'd love to include your questions in the episode. Just record your questions as a voice memo on your phone or write it in an email and send it to connect@distractionpodcast.com. That's connect@distractionpodcast.com. We'd really love to hear from you. The show will be so much better the more questions we receive, and we're targeting the topic of women and ADHD. Distraction is produced by Collisions, the podcast division of CRN International. Collisions, podcasts for curious people. Our sound engineer is the incredibly talented Scott Person, and our producer is the amazingly brilliant and creative Sarah Curtin.